Mitchell Zuckoff, Ponzi Scheme, the true story of a financial legend. In this summary of A Ponzi Scheme, the true story of a financial legend by Mitchell Zuckoff, we dive into the life and notorious fraudulent activities of Charles Ponzi, an Italian immigrant who turned rags into imaginary riches. Get ready to explore Ponzi's journey from Italy to the United States, along with a detailed account of the development and downfall of his infamous Securities Exchange Corporation. This summary delves into Ponzi's unique schemes, financial manipulations, and ultimately, his masterful marketing tactics that lead to the rise and fall of his fraudulent empire.
The rise and fall of Charles Ponzi. Charles Ponzi, a penniless Italian immigrant, rose to fame through his Securities Exchange Corporation scam in the 1920s. His money-for-nothing ethos struck a nerve in a society that valued wealth and instant assets. Ponzi's scam reached its peak during the decade-long economic boom leading up to the Great Depression when American attitudes towards wealth were changing. A new ethos was emerging, one that would reshape what it meant to be an American. Ponzi's ambitious dreams but lack of desire to work saw him move frequently and work different jobs. He was even incarcerated for forgery before launching his famous scam. The Ponzi Scheme. Charles Ponzi, a convicted smuggler, found inspiration in international reply coupons, a relatively obscure transfer document. He promised his investors 50% returns within 45 days, and they fell for it. Despite never actually trading the coupons for profit, his scam worked because it appeared to be such a lucrative deal. His Securities Exchange Corporation took in $2.5 million from investors in June 1920 alone. Ponzi's technical strategy was all a lie, and there were never enough coupons to amount to his promised millions in profits. Ponzi's masterful marketing. During the 1920s, Charles Ponzi was a master of marketing, using his ability to combine greed with altruism to draw in investors. His extravagant lifestyle, including a chauffeured car that cost $12,600, caught the attention of the Boston Post, which helped bring new investors to his doorstep. Despite being sued for $1 million, Ponzi's scheme seemed perfectly timed, attracting 30,000 investors and $9.6 million in just 7 months. Ponzi's success led to imitators, and he even called the police to investigate a rival company. However, Ponzi's scam was nothing new, and the scheme that used proceeds from later investors to pay earlier ones was known as robbing Peter to pay Paul frauds. The rise and fall of Ponzi. Ponzi was a charismatic Italian immigrant who painted himself as a friend of the common man and promised to donate any profits over $1 million to charity. He tapped into public sentiment and curried favor with Boston's elite, but his success ultimately made him the target of journalistic and regulatory scrutiny. The Boston Post, which initially covered his operations with praise, became more skeptical after realizing the scheme's potential for wholesale fraud. Ponzi's fanciful lifestyle and showmanship were good for business, but his promised largesse never materialized. Despite his attempt to pay nearly $15 million to curry satisfaction from his investors, postal officials ultimately forbade trading of the coupons to block Ponzi's phantom profits. Ponzi's rise and fall. The story of Charles Ponzi, the notorious fraudster from Boston who built an empire on empty promises and left thousands of investors in despair, is recounted in this book. Initially hailed as an investment genius, Ponzi promised impressive profits to his clients by buying and selling international reply coupons. As money poured in from unsuspecting investors, Ponzi used it to pay off early investors and enjoy a luxurious lifestyle. However, his scheme eventually unraveled when the media, regulators, and former associates began to question his credibility and credentials. Despite his efforts to placate them with audits and promises, Ponzi's bookkeeping tricks were exposed, his assets were seized, and his investors were left empty-handed. This cautionary tale illustrates the risks and consequences of greed, deception, and misplaced trust in the pursuit of wealth. The Ponzi Scheme King. Charles Ponzi, dubbed the king of Ponzi schemes, spent most of his life devising get-rich-quick schemes that defrauded investors of vast sums of money. He proclaimed his innocence during his trial, claiming to have destroyed all evidence of his transactions, but was convicted and served time in jail before being released. Ponzi then went on to set up another fraudulent investment scheme in Florida, which resulted in a further prison sentence. He tried to evade justice by faking his own death and changing his identity, but was eventually caught and deported to Italy. His legacy still resonates. The Boston Post won a Pulitzer Prize for covering his story, while several banks failed due to their association with him. Despite this, some investors did receive a fraction of their investments back, while Ponzi died penniless in Brazil in 1949 at the age of 66. Today, his name is synonymous with the type of scheme he perfected, where early investors are paid with the subsequent investments of others.
Throughout Ponzi's story, we follow the rise and fall of his groundbreaking scam that ultimately left thousands of investors with a sour taste in their mouths. While Ponzi's initial intentions were seemingly ambitious, he used illicit tricks and manipulations to attract investors and hoard a significant fortune. However, Ponzi's clever tactics eventually led to public skepticism, regulatory scrutiny, and his eventual capture and downfall. Despite this, Ponzi's larger-than-life persona leaves his name synonymous with large-scale financial fraud, inspiring the term Ponzi scheme for generations to come. Ponzi's story serves as a cautionary tale for investors and proves that when something seems too good to be true, it often is.